Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. This video is going to be about Lilith in Taurus and Lilith in the second house. So when it comes to Lilith being in the sign versus the house, think of the sign as the expression through Taurus energy, like the personality of Taurus. Of course, Lilith deals in extremes, but it will be a very Taurus expression. When this is happening in the second house, it's in the house of values, security, self-worth, so many things. We'll go over all of the things that the second house represents and the way that Lilith affects it. But that's going to be the difference between the sign and the house for you. This is also my Lilith sign, so very personal here. And I do have a video that goes more into Lilith in the description. And also in the description, I'll have a link to my shop if you are interested in getting a natal chart reading or a synastry chart reading from me. But let's get into this. So Lilith is a part of our charts where we feel shame, we feel rejection, we feel like we have some part of us that was not acceptable. This is usually brought on by something early on, causing us to suppress a part of ourselves that's very genuine and very much wants to be seen, wants to be expressed, and wants to be reclaimed. That's what Lilith's energy is about, is taking back what we were initially shamed and rejected for. So the energy that Lilith is in tends to, like I said, be expressed in extremes. What Taurus is very known for, which is sensuality, very physical, tangible experiences. Taurus is ruled by Venus. There can be a strong focus on pleasure, luxury, money, possessiveness, security. These are all Taurus second house things. So when expressed in the extreme, of course, we have indulgence versus a complete rejection of pleasure. There can be obsession with security that comes from money, that comes from our worthiness, that comes from our talents and our innate ability to support ourselves. But what it all boils down to is self-worth and value. That's what the second house represents. Ultimately, it's about our value as a person in a body, our validity, feeling allowed to take up space, feeling like we are going to be secure, we're going to be safe. So there is a lot of very primal and survival related qualities to this. There can be a strong connection to body image, to beauty, and of course that can have so many connections to food and to how you treat yourself, whether you over or under treat yourself. It's ultimately connected to how you feel about yourself and what you own, what you have possession over. Taurus is very into possession. There is this kind of odd relationship with owning something where there can be the idea of things being all or nothing. Like if something isn't 100% yours, you don't want anything to do with it. There can be an incredibly strong drive to accumulate. This can be money, possessions, validation, anything that feels like it is of worth to you. Again, it's always about your self-worth and your feelings of worth. But since this can typically stem from circumstances and how we were treated in childhood, there can be strong ties to not having enough, to feeling like you need to earn your place, and really just issues overall with feeling safe. So in order to feel safe, we can develop all sorts of coping mechanisms. And usually the coping mechanisms are related to pleasure and sensuality in some sort of way, whether it's maybe retail therapy, maybe getting validation about your appearance, your sexuality from other people. Maybe it's about always making sure that you have something yummy, always making sure that you can fall back on some sort of comfort. So self-control and discipline can be a really tough thing here. It can honestly be a better choice to go cold turkey on the sorts of things that you find you have the strongest issues with. Though of course it's always going to be important to develop discipline and trust in yourself, trust in your ability to treat yourself in a healthy way Say if buying yourself something makes you feel better, don't always rely on whatever it is for you, the feeling of consuming in some way. That shouldn't be where the pleasure lies ultimately. It's really important to check any soothing behaviors that you have, especially if they are out of control sometimes. Because one thing about Taurus that everyone knows is that it's incredibly stubborn. So this can be a really, really hard thing to work through. And sometimes just not giving yourself the option at all can be helpful. But I completely understand that depending on your circumstances, you might not be able to avoid something that you might over or underdo. Even if this is about making money, say you feel like you always have to be having a certain amount of money and always having a certain amount of money coming in order to make yourself feel good about yourself. The key is to always feel good about yourself, to self-validate and to find the things that you love about yourself and emphasize them and appreciate them and allow them to exist. Lilith just wants to be seen. It just wants to be, it fights back against that rejection. That's why there can be such a compulsive element, especially to this placement. It's compulsive because when you suppress something, it tends to fight back. You can't push something down forever, especially when it's a core part of you and it's something that has always been there, has always wanted to be seen, and isn't going to go away because it's important. So like almost more than any other sign, to have Lilith in balance, moderation are so incredibly important. You will find that if you are overcompensating in one area, you're likely not feeding into another area, an area that would like to be fed into. And often this is connected to what we are rejecting. Just totally, for example, say you're an artist at heart, but societal conditioning has made you believe that you can only be happy if you're making money in a more traditional sense. If you are always feeding into the job and you're ignoring your creativity, you're ignoring what your heart wants you to do, that can cause a big imbalance here. And Lilith is very much about balancing the masculine and the feminine, the pursuit and attraction, the work and the rest. There is a really strong need for that sort of balance and for recognizing the areas where you are imbalanced, because this energy will lead into focusing on those soothing behaviors. As soon as you have reached that point where you've just tipped totally past any sort of good balance, it can just trigger something in you. Like, okay, I need to soothe. I need to do this thing that I know will always make me feel better. And it's just a slippery slope. And when it comes to having a healthy balance of like input versus output, or whatever it is that you struggle with, it is really important to be able to trust yourself. Discipline, Taurus, and trusting yourself, it can be really hard. Like, I totally, completely understand this. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect in any way. It's really hard to aim for perfection. That's why I'm feeling kind of bad about recommending cold turkey. But this is honestly something I'm trying to figure out myself. But the thing is like when you do little sneaky things because you don't really trust yourself, you don't trust your compulsive tendencies, it creates an even further imbalance because you're the one who you have to rely on. But if you're not even giving yourself that trust in the first place, you're not giving yourself a chance. So yes, maybe if you give yourself a chance, you might fail. But if you keep trying, you're going to get better. And you're going to be able to find out how to create the healthy balance for yourself. So really, more than taking my advice too much, figure out what's good for you, what's right for you, and what feels like it's going to be the most personalized process, because everyone's totally different. We all have a completely different combination of energies in our chart. And of course, that's also going to mean whether Lilith really stands out in your chart or not. So look at your own energies. But let's talk about sharing. Possessiveness, this idea of like something has to be mine or yours. There can be a really strong focus on possession in general, where you would never take something that you consider to be somebody else's. because that's just a line you don't want to cross. This can be a strong theme in life, in having difficulty with joint ownership and sharing. Scorpio is opposite Taurus, and Scorpio is all about that mutually vulnerable shared energy. So that's a good way to balance this. Practice sharing, practice having things that are usually yours. Let your grip just loosen a little bit. Maybe just take baby steps towards not just sharing what you have, but also like receiving from other people, because this can represent a really hard time with reception, with traction, a feminine imbalance in the way of you might feel like you always need to work extra hard just to get whatever will come to you. This is essentially energetically blocking things that want to come to you anyway, things that you do deserve, thinking you have to work for every little thing and then letting your value be determined by someone else, an employer, a circumstance. This is another area where your own sense of worth and value really determines what you'll allow to come in, what you can receive. So what tends to come with this placement is the better you feel about yourself, the more you recognize just your inherent worth and like who you are genuinely as a authentic self, things tend to improve. Material security, energy surrounding you being more supportive. Your self-worth is very much tied to your circumstances. And finances and money are definitely a theme with this one. The second house is about what we possess and what is ours and what we have that is of value. Very important with this placement to be as ethical and honest as you possibly can, especially within like business dealings, because that sense of possessiveness can also, when unhealthily expressed, be taking other people's stuff for your own. And if you do have an idea of like maybe being afraid that your own true worth will not be seen by other people, like you have so much to offer but nobody's recognizing it, or if you have sort of like a preoccupation on being unfairly compensated, if you feel like that always happens, again, it's tied to your self-worth, it's tied to your own sense of value and what you feel that you have to offer. And this is not inherently connected to only your talents. This isn't just what you can work for. This is who you are as a person, because who you are as a person, you have value without having to do anything. Who you are just in that essence of who you are. That's where your value lies. You're here for a reason. You have things to do. You have interests and you have people that you attract. All of these things just come from who you are. The idea that you have to overcompensate or that you have to work, you have to earn, you have to struggle. Check back to maybe like how you were treated growing up, how your energy was received by the people in authority around you, and whether they made you feel like you were inherently valuable or like you maybe have to work really hard just in order to, I don't know, earn shelter, to earn food, to feel like just who you are as a person. If you were made to feel like who you are as a person is a burden, if you were treated as like the idea that children are only there to help out around the house, that sort of idea, I just want you to know you're not a burden. You deserve to live, you deserve to be born, and you deserve to be taken care of. You absolutely deserve to have all of your basic needs met. When you were a baby that couldn't take care of yourself, it's so frustrating. But I just want you to know that. I want you to know that you don't need to do anything to earn basic security. That is your birthright, just to live and to maintain that life. That is something that you should have a sense of naturally. But for people with this placement, it tends to be a very wounded part of us. And the Taurus connection to Venus and beauty and aesthetics and just having attractive, beautiful things around you, being an attractive, beautiful thing, whatever it is that your focus is on, there's nothing wrong with that. perfectly fine to want your surroundings to be beautiful. That's pretty natural with this placement. But make sure that it's not for any reason other than just your enjoyment. If you are overly fixated on appearances in any way, that can be another sign of imbalance, a sign of not seeing your inherent worth, or feeling like you have to make things just extra perfect so that they're acceptable, so that other people can see the value. And there can be a very strong fear of loss here. You could have been met with loss very early on in your life. And in this way, I find that the balance of Taurus opposite Scorpio. Scorpio has a lot to do with terminating things, with ending them, with completing the cycle and to start something new. Taurus can continue within that stubborn energy, just keep going and going past beyond when something is still working. So issues with closure, with ending things, can also be a really strong theme here. So in those cases, it's important to practice ending things that you want to. Like if something is a struggle and you just continue to do it every day because you are considering that commitment to be like an honorable thing. Commitment is honorable. Taurus is wonderful for its ability to stick to things and to commit and just stay. But there are a lot of things that can't go on forever and continue to be healthy and good for us. So if something feels like drudgery, maybe try to find a way to end it. But ultimately, this placement, it shows a lot of taste, a lot of talent, and really high quality senses, like a really good sense for beauty and for making things enjoyable for people, yourself and others. And ultimately, you do want to be able to share this talent, share your talents, share who you are and what makes you special, because that's where your value really lies. And you'll find that the more that you really go into those things that you're passionate about, that have always been there for you, that have always been a part of you, but maybe you haven't found an outlet for it, or you felt like it's a really bad part of you that needs to stay locked away. Try letting those things out. And maybe even try sharing them with other people, because then that adds extra validation. Of course, validation should come from yourself ultimately, but it can be wonderful to be able to share your talents with other people and see how they're affecting other people in positive ways. So I really understand how difficult this one can be. That stubbornness is just really a thing. But ultimately, please focus on the fact that you completely have the right to exist and you have the right to enjoy things. But there can be a need to really deeply understand like momentary pleasure, momentary rewards versus what we know is really good for us. And what we know is better long term. Just remember, Taurus energy is incredible at long-term things. It can stick to a plan with that stubbornness. So if you can create like a little game plan for yourself of maybe what would be ideal, the ideal way to behave, and if you can, just go all out and stick to that. But please forgive yourself if you find it hard. It might take a lot of tries and it might take some readjustment. But ultimately, you know yourself. You know yourself way better than I do. But a lot of the Lilith, it's about introspection. It's about getting to know the parts of yourself that you've avoided getting to know. The parts that seem harsh and unpleasant. That's a Lilith. She's not unpleasant and she wants to be seen. Okay, so I hope this is helpful. If you have anything that you'd like to share or anything at all, I'm super curious. I hope this is helpful in some way. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Bye.